Welcome guys, I'm back again with another video, and in this video we are going to be learning about angles, about directions north, south, east, west, about the rotation, whether you're rotating clockwise or anti-clockwise, and depending on which direction you are rotating and for how many degrees you rotate, which which direction would you end up at, or if you add a certain direction and you rotate it a certain degrees, where which direction did you start, which direction did you move in, or which direction were you facing when you started rotating. So let's get started. So first what we'll do is we'll just talk about different types of angles. The first type that we are going to talk about is the 45 degree, well, we are going to use 45 as an example here. 45 degree angle. Now the angle 45 is less than 90. Anytime that you have an angle which is less than 90 degrees, that angle is called an acute angle. Now the second type of angle that we're going to talk about is the angle that is at 90 degrees. Now the 90 degree angle is called a right angle, or sometimes it's even called a square angle. Okay, third type of angle. Supposing you have a 135 degree angle. Now anytime that you have an angle which is greater than 90 degrees but is less than 180 degrees, that angle is called an obtuse angle. Now for the fourth type of angle, we are going to consider example of 225 degrees. Now anytime that you have an angle which is greater than 180 but is less than 360, which in this case 225 is, such an angle is called a reflex angle. So now we are going to study directions, which we'll be using later on in this video to solve an exercise. We've just talked about angles, so let's talk about directions. So we have little Johnny on the screen now. Now the direction pointing up, straight up, is north. The direction pointing straight down is south. The direction pointing to the right is east, and the direction pointing to the left is west. Now the direction in between east and north is called northeast. All the directions between north and west is called northwest. The direction between south and east is called southeast, and the direction between south and west is called southwest. Now, having studied angles and north, south, east, west directions, we are going to study two more concepts. One is called the clockwise direction or rotation. What that basically is, it follows the arms on the clock. On the top, it moves from left to right. At the bottom, it moves from right to left. On the right hand side is from top to bottom, and on the left is bottom to top. So basically it resembles the arm movement on a clock, and that's called the clockwise direction. Now the opposite of the clockwise direction that we just looked at, we are going to be looking at the anti-clockwise direction, also called the counterclockwise direction. This is basically the arms of a clock moving in the opposite direction, so the arms are turning backwards. On the top, the movement would be from right to left. At the bottom, the movement would be from left to right. On the right, the movement is going to be from bottom to top, and on the left, the movement is going to be from top to bottom. So this is exactly the opposite of how the arms of a clock rotate. Okay, so time for question number 1. Johnny is facing south. If he turns 135 degrees clockwise, in which direction would he be facing? All right. So let's try and solve this with what we learned about directions and about angles. Right now we have got Johnny facing south. So we've got that labeled in red. We also see the direction in which Johnny is rotating. And the question says he's turning clockwise. So the blue arrow is showing the clockwise rotation. Now, the next step is to look at how many degrees he's going to be turning. The question tells me he is turning 135 degrees. So the degree between the angle between south and southwest is 45 degrees. Between southwest and west is another 45 degrees, so 45 and 45, 90. And then from the west to northwest, that's an additional 45, so 90 plus 45 is 135. So if he rotates 135 degrees clockwise starting from south, he'll end up in northwest. Question 2. Johnny is facing east. In which direction must he turn 45 degrees to face northeast? The question says that Johnny is facing east initially, and then he turns 45 degrees, and now he's facing northeast. So the question says which direction should he have turned, clockwise or anti-clockwise, in order to end up facing northeast. So if Johnny is facing east and he turns 45 degrees and ends up at northeast, he must have turned anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, because if he were to turn clockwise 45 degrees, he would end up at southeast and not northeast as the question requires us to do. So the direction in which Johnny was turning was counterclockwise. Question number 3. In which direction is Johnny facing initially? If he turns 180 degrees and ends up at northeast. So there are two directions in which we can turn. We can turn clockwise, or we can turn anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. Now, if we were to turn clockwise from northeast, if we turn 45 degrees, we'll end up at east, and then another 45 degree will get you to southeast, a total of 90 degrees, and then an additional 45 that will get you to south, and then once again you turn another 45 degrees clockwise, so a total of 180 degrees, and you end up at southwest. Now if you were to do the same thing counterclockwise, what will happen is if you go from south northeast 45 degrees counterclockwise, you'll end up at north, then an additional 45 degrees, so a total of 90, that will get you to northwest, then another 45 degrees, which is 135, will get you to west, and then another 45 will get you a total of 180 degrees, and which will get you to southwest. So it doesn't really matter whether you're turning clockwise or anti-clockwise, because you're turning 180 degrees. Now if it was some other angle, then it would have made a difference, but 180 is a unique angle, so it doesn't matter whether you're turning clockwise or anti-clockwise. So if you ended up at northeast and you were turning 180 degrees, you would have started at southwest. Question number 4. Johnny is facing southeast. He turns 315 degrees anti-clockwise. Which direction is he facing now? So Johnny is starting at southeast and he's turning counterclockwise. So taking it step by step, a 45 degree turns counterclockwise or anti-clockwise lands him at east. then an additional 45 degrees, that makes it a total of 90 degrees, puts him at northeast, then a 45-degree angle turn, which makes a total of 135-degree turn from the starting position, puts him at north. Then we add another 45-degree turn, and this makes it a total of 180 degrees from the starting point, and that brings him to northwest. Then a 45-degree turn counterclockwise, which is actually 225 degrees total from the starting point. It's putting him at west, and then a 45-degree turn, bringing a total of 270 degrees, makes it southwest, and then the final 45-degree turn, so making a total of 315 as asked for in the question. That puts him at south. So 315-degree turn from starting off from southeast, going counterclockwise, Johnny is going to end up facing south. Question number 5. Johnny is facing northwest. How many degrees does Johnny need to turn clockwise in order to land at south? So Johnny is facing northwest. He is turning clockwise and needs to end up at south. So let's approach this step by step. Okay, so a 45-degree turn clockwise would bring him to north. Carrying on another 45-degree, so a total of 90 degrees from the starting point would bring him to northeast. But we need to keep going forward and finally end up at south. So another 45-degree, meaning a total of 135-degree turn from the starting point clockwise, would mean Johnny is now facing east. Another 45-degree clockwise would mean a total of 180 degrees is what Johnny has turned so far, and now he's facing southeast. Now the final step, another 45 degrees, and Johnny is facing south. So basically he has to turn 225 degrees starting at northwest, turning 225 degrees clockwise, and he's going to end up at south. Question number 6. Which direction is Johnny facing initially if he turns 90 degrees clockwise and ends up facing east? So if Johnny was facing northeast and turning clockwise, he will only have to turn 45 degrees and end up at east. But Johnny is actually turning 90 degrees, so we need to go 45 degrees further back. So Johnny needs to start at north, and from north to northeast is 45 degrees, and from northeast to east is 45 degrees. So 45 plus 45, 90 degrees. So Johnny has to be facing north and then turn 90 degrees clockwise to end up at east. Question number 7. Johnny is facing northeast and turns 270 degrees anti-clockwise. What direction would he end up facing? So Johnny is starting off by facing northeast, and he's turning counterclockwise or anti-clockwise. Now when he turns 45 degrees anti-clockwise starting at northeast, he'll end up facing north. That's just 45 degrees. So carrying on, he turns another 45 degrees, and 45 plus 45, that's a total of 90 degrees from the starting position, and now he's facing northwest. Let's go for another 45-degree turn. Now the total turn from the starting position is 135 degrees, and now Johnny is facing west. Further, if you go along, we turn another 45 degrees, and now the total rotation from the starting of northeast, and now is 180 degrees, and now he's facing southwest. We keep carrying forward, and we turn for the last 45 degrees. Now the total rotation from the starting at northeast, 270 degrees rotation, brings him to face south. Question number 8. Johnny is facing southwest. In which direction must Johnny turn 225 degrees to end up facing north? So now Johnny has two directions in which he can turn. Johnny can turn clockwise, or Johnny could turn anti-clockwise. Let's look at the clockwise direction rotation first. Now Johnny is starting off by facing southwest. So he turns 45 degrees clockwise, ends up at west. He keeps going and turns another 45 degrees. So a total of 90 degrees from the starting of at southwest, and now he's facing northwest. Carrying on another 45 degrees, so a total of 135 degrees from the starting point. He's now facing north. We still got two more rotations to go, another 2 more 45 degree rotations to go, but we have already reached north. So we know that the clockwise rotation is not it. So Johnny is turning, in the anti-clockwise rotation, and let's check if that is correct or not. So since the clockwise rotation didn't work out, we are now going to try turning anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. Starting from southwest, Johnny turns 45 degrees, and now he's facing south. We still got some ways to go, so he turns another 45 degrees, so a total of 90 degrees from the starting point, and ends up at southeast. Further 45 degree turn brings him to face east. So we've got a total of 135 degrees turned so far. Then an additional 45 degrees makes it a total of 180 degrees from the starting from southwest, and now Johnny is facing northeast, and he turns one last time for 45 degrees, and he's facing north as the question had asked us for. So if Johnny turns counterclockwise for 225 degrees, he'll end up facing north. So the answer is Johnny needs to turn counterclockwise because the clockwise direction didn't work out.